is everyone. So INEC told us 84 million Nigerians were the ones, the figures that we had going into the 2019 election. So 84,004,084 people were on INEC register. But when INEC began the CVR, that's the continuous voter registration, it had 12,298,944 registrants. But out of all of that, we have a lot of things that have happened. Double registration, fraudulent registration, and all of that. When all of those happen, after the deduplication of this figure, and it came down to 9,518,188 voters that were established as the true voter that came through this CVR process. So if you minus this, if you take this away from this, it tells you that about 3 million fraudulent double registration or invalid registration happened in this process. Now, if you look at this, there is a huge difference. We are almost nearing 100 million voters in Nigeria. That's 96,303,028 eligible voters. I remember that we were in the US, Dr. Abdul, and this figure is not true. The INEC chairman was describing just how huge the numbers of Nigerian voters are. In fact, is about almost the size of several countries in West Africa. For you, this process, what do you make of this? Now we're getting this 96 million people, Dr. Abdul.
Yeah, so is it 96 or 93?
This is 96, isn't it?
Yeah, because the
93.4 actually.
Okay, it's about 93.
Okay, so if you put these together, it gives you 90.
Yeah, it's 93.4. Yeah, it's about 93.4.
So we have about
93.4.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually it tells you. I think there are two major learnings for me on the total figure. One, some of us who have made some earlier predictions and have been involved in analyzing this figure, an impression was given that the number of new registrants is so massive. But the reality is also showing that there are actually fewer new registrants compared to those who registered, compared to the number of new registrants before 2019 general elections. So if you check this, in the 2019, before the 2019 general election, I think there were about 14 million or so new registrants compared to the figures we're seeing here now. But it's an encouraging thing that we should recognize. So we have new registrants. Then the cleaning process is also very encouraging, and we must commend INEC for doing that. But the reality of this is that, look, we have a history of voter registration that is like every elections, you do first registration. And there are people who grew up with that mentality. So once you say their registration is going on, they go, even though they already have their PVC, despite all the education and the awareness that both civil society and INEC try to provide, that you don't actually, if you have your PVC, you don't need to go and re-register. But a lot of people went and did that. Yes, there are the fraudulent element of it where people registered with funny names here and there, and we're happy that this cleaning happened. I think for me, lastly, the most interesting development around this is that the CVR also allowing for online initiation of the registration process. I think that's a very encouraging thing that happened. We haven't been able to confirm exactly how many people went through
to the physical.
Through the
percentage of those who initiated
online
and who went
and those who went physical. Yeah, because that's the direction we want to take. We want to see that you can stay in your house and actually register. We have a secured system that you don't only initiate, probably in future, that you are also able to complete your registration and generate your own card right from where you are actually seated. That's the direction we want to take. So if INEC helps, probably after the election or later, be able to do that analysis and show us how many people actually initiated this process and actually completed it, how many people initiated but failed to complete it, and then we now begin to see where are the gaps and see how probably before the next general elect or the one before, after these general elections, we probably may be doing our CVR through the online process.
Well, one thing that we were discussing earlier, Mr. Ojo, remember, was the disparity or the difference in the figures of the women and the men in the election. Thank God that in this country we have that clarity. So there are 50% men who in the new registration and 49 women in this registration. But there is that enthusiasm we always see in the female gender. It's not only registering anyways, it's actual people going there to vote. Your take, Mr. Ojo?
Well, it's in tandem with the fact that we actually, it's good to, they say facts don't lie. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when people go to town with just hubris about, oh, there are more women than men in Nigeria. There are more female registrants than men in Nigeria. Thank God that after the election, we are going to have the population announcing census. These are things that will help you lay to rest, whether there are more women or there are more men, but at least let's work with these facts. It shows that more. But again, we need to err on the side of caution. Given the challenges Nigerian women face, it does not reflect the total population demography of women. Because this is a voluntary exercise. Mm-hmm. Nobody makes it compulsory for you to come and register. Men may have more opportunity because men being men, patriarchy and all of that may have men. But you see, it's very close. The figures are very close. 50.8, 49.1. It's almost like 50-50. Yeah. If you want to do, well, no approximation because 49.1, you can't approximate that.
Yeah, but sorry to interject, but the reality is that it reflects the character of the gender, this diversity of the population of the country, looking at the population, because it's 51% male, mm-hmm. and 49% women. Yeah. So if you look at this, you may can actually extrapolate and say that more women actually came out to register, mm-hmm. Than men, because in reality is that they're about 18% above the 49% of the population that they actually control in the country.
Because we'll get into a deeper part.
No, it's all right.
Yeah. This is another one, Mr. Ojo. Yeah. The age distribution, and in terms of the registration, so you look at it between 18 and 35. And this is perhaps one thing that personally I've always said, the people within that age margin, my younger ones, should also know that it is their time. If they have done so well in coming out, they made about 70% of the new registration. Why not use that power during the election? So if you look at it, so you have 18 to 35, the middle age, 35 to 49, having this percentage and this number, elderly and the old, they're having this figure compared to the men and the women.
This is already 74% or thereabouts. If you add the youth and middle age together, that means 49 years old and below. And don't forget, the benchmark is 18 years. So you are looking at 18 to 49 years, that they form over 70% of the demography of people who will choose the next set of leaders in 1,491 constituencies. And that is why when you extrapolate this, I just came back from a coaching and mentoring workshop earlier today, and I was encouraging the female candidates that we did this for. And I said, look, if you look at the quantum of resources federal government is putting into conducting 2023 election, it would be a shame if we don't have good turnout of voters. Because this is the costliest election in the history of Nigeria. Mm-hmm. This election is costing the nation over 400 billion. Because if you add 305 billion in 2022 budget to 173 billion, it goes in 2023 budget. I mean, the one of 2022 is 305 billion, and the one of, according to the Minister of Finance, 173.6 billion. If you add the two together, that's almost half a trillion. I mean, not so close, but over 400 billion. So if you have that kind of quantum of resources being put into election, and people of this demography between 49 and 18 refuse to come out, and they keep complaining, looking for way to japa to abroad, they are not helping, because these elderly people who are 50 to 69, they have seen it all. They are not afraid to die. But the younger generation who should take ownership and make sure that the leadership recruitment of 2023 is not business as usual, that we shine our eyes and make sure that we have new set of leaders who can set us on the right trajectory to development. Because whether we like it or not now, Nigeria's development is suboptimal. It is suboptimal, and this is why I'm glad my elder brother, Mr. Victor Aluko, is here. He's doing his level best within the envelope of resources available to the Commission. But we know civil society organizations are also doing a lot to sensitize people, because these figures should not just be figures. We should see it. We should humanize this figure.
We go to break now. But the irony, which I like us to ponder on during this break, is the fact that you look at this bracket, this top bar, all right? They form the majority. But guess what? This bar are the ones that they are going to be voting for.
Ironically, that's true.
Yeah.
Because
so if you look at
the major contestants fall within that.
They fall within this bracket between the age of.
In fact, almost 90%.
Some huge percentage of those who are running for president are within this lower bar. And more of the other strata are in this lower bar. So these people are the servants of these people. And they are supposed to be determining. That's the irony.
I think that's not my analysis.
When we come back, everyone,
I think there is more nuance.
Whether you are the servant in this bracket to these guys here, and you know that you need to determine the fate of this country in the next 43 days, and you do not know that you have the power to do so, you'll be getting more information and education tonight on the program. So much to unpack. You still have a long way to go right here on Politics on Channels Television. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone. We indeed took a break earlier, but here we didn't take a break. No water break, no breather, because we're actually talking about some of the sensibilities behind these figures. Victor Aluko, Director of Voter Education at INEC, is still with us on the program. Jide Ojo, a political analyst and one of Channels Television election consultant. Dr. Hussein Abdul, the Chairman of the Board of Yaga Africa. Thank you so much indeed, gentlemen, for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
Let's get back to this. I raised, it's a bit controversial, but if we dwell on that, it will take the whole of the... So, I mean, my point, Doc, is that, and you're very valid, the fact that these guys are more in number, but in reality, we might have more people running for office here, but the question that I was posing earlier is, if these guys just realize just how much power they have in their permanent voter card, they might be able to determine just how this election goes. That's the point I was making.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. The number of young people, and we also have to thank INEC for actually insisting on having given us this disaggregated data. We don't used to have that, and data is very important in national development. It's what we can use for planning. Even politicians would actually use it to know whom to target in terms of mobilizing vote. So the number is really, really clear that younger people close to 70%. If you check, if you actually combine the first and the second,
over 70 actually.
The
between
first and the
18
second
and 49,
so that's a huge number, and that's a number that if you generate what we call generational identity, if you have a generational identity, and that identity is accepting that we are a product of this generation, and this is the agenda of this generation, and therefore drive it along that line. But you don't often easily get generational identity, because age identity are really transitional identity. You can be 18 today, but next year you are 19. You are 35 today, next year you are 36. So it does not galvanize the emotion associated with with primordial identities, whether it is ethnicity, it is religion, or even gender. So it doesn't give us that kind of thing. But the fact you are saying is that the bulk of the people who will be voting are younger than the bulk of the people who are running for election. That's true.
So let's run with this, Mr. Jide Ojo and Mr. Aluko. I'll bring you up into the conversation. So you look at it in terms of new registration. So this again tells us something. So this is what the old figures, if you put the 2019 figure and the 2023 figure, this is what we come to. But if you look at the voting, the new registration that is, you will see that the people between the age of 18 and 34 were more in the new registration. And so if you look at, let's flip the page. Now, this is one area that Mr. Ojo, I'd like you to come in, and maybe Mr. Aluko can give us a sense of how we came about this. So in terms of the 10 top states by new registration, this is what we have. Lagos is topping it. If you look at the highest number of states, the state with the highest number of whatever, Lagos still will have it. So what's your take? Now we have Lagos, Kano, Kaduna, Delta, Oyo, Rivers topping the number of the states with the registration.
Well, this doesn't come as a surprise, given the fact that the demography of these states are the cosmopolitan states in Nigeria, not necessarily in terms of the number of people living there. If you look at Kano and Lagos population are purportedly running neck to neck. But if you go by NPC, National Population Commission demography, it won't give you that figure. But be that as it may, I think the consciousness, the urbanization, the cosmopolitan nature, the metropolitan nature of Lagos, Kano, Kaduna, Delta, Oyo, Rivers, actually could be a driving force why you have those a huge number of registrants. And even if you had it to the old figure of 84 million, that was the benchmark figure as at the time we are having this new registration, you'll find that the figure, the positions are not much different. They will still retain those positions as it were. But again, I see it as the level of consciousness in those states. Kano has been traditionally very highly political environment, and that speaks even to the way they elect their leaders. That it's not about money, it's about ideas. And that's why you see people like Abubakar Rimi, people who are not, even Ibrahim Shekarau defeating a Kwakwanso in 2003. If you look at wealth, if you look at resources, maybe Ibrahim Shekarau will never have been president, governor of Kano. But Lagos, cosmopolitan nature, the fact that it is the economic nerve center of the country, is the most urban states in the country, and Kaduna is not lagging behind. That's the political headquarters of northern Nigeria. Of course, in terms of urbanization, it also Delta, of course, is not too surprising.
But let me bring quickly, Mr. Aluko, if you can give us a sense. So these are the states with the bottom in terms of the ladder in that way. Ekiti being the one that with the lowest.
That is his own
Mr. Aluko. So I saw you couldn't hide. 76,000 people came out to do that. So what do you think psychologically was responsible by the reason why people came out and why people did not come out?
Well, I think quite a lot of people came out in the country. We'll take the totality, we'll respond to the totality as a commission. We provided the data for the purpose of analysis, for the purpose of research, and for the purpose of planning. And so we are happy if people are able to analyze, are able to use the data for planning. But for us as a commission, all voters are the same. No matter your age, no matter where you are the same to INEC, whether you are 18, whether you're 100. Our major interest is that please believe in us, trust us. On election day, come out and vote. If you talk about the relationship between the low levels of registering and population. Of course, it's well known.
Yes.
It is not a heavily populated state.
But again,
within the Southwest itself is the least populated.
Just for a moment, you look at a state like Gombe, Ebonyi. We have more people coming out, FCT, and these are not places that have more population than Ekiti. Don't forget, during the CVR, Ekiti was going to have an election. So you imagine that the push to go out and register should be there in Ekiti. Could there be some way, I mean, psychologically or in some ways, there is some signs that we do not understand that is not allowing the people in Ekiti to come out?
No, people actually came out in Ekiti, but maybe some people went to the farms. And,
most people are outside of the state.
Someone said here on the program, one of the nights, and said the brothers in the Southeast we go ply their trade on the election day. And I said, no, it won't happen. So if you say that Ekiti people are in the farm on election day.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Just on the light note. Yeah. But interesting. So let's look at it quickly. So if you look at the total registration by region, this is one area. One of the nights, again, we'll come back and we'll talk about the contestation between the states with the highest figure. So we look at it by region. Northwest still leading, uncontestable figure compared to Southwest that is always in the second in terms of the total voter registration that we have. North Central, third, South, fourth, Northeast, fifth, and Southeast retaining its ever position as being the lowest voting bloc in Nigeria. And so you see the map right there. This guy with 7 states, are you surprised that it still holds that whatever? And that election, this figure will determine how the election goes.
Let me weigh in quickly on this. You see, it doesn't come to me as a surprise. You have mentioned in passing the fact that Northwest has 7 states. Yeah. Southeast has 5 states. So, and the Northwest, the states of the Northwest also happens to be heavily populated.
Absolutely.
I mean, Jigawa is even bigger than
Kano, Kaduna,
Katsina,
yeah.
You know, Sokoto. Then you have Zamfara. Even though Zamfara with its security challenge, you know, may be one of the least populated states, but it has at least between 4 to 5 heavily populated states in that Northwest. So it doesn't come to me as a surprise. And you could see that the margin. In fact, the point I want to lay emphasis on is that Northwest with 7 states, Southwest with 6 states are running neck to neck.
Yeah.
23.82%, 23.
No, I think there's a problem.
There's a
problem with the percentage distribution.
But 17 million and 22 million.
Okay, that's about 5 million.
Yeah.
About 5 million. So maybe the percentage was faulty.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, that could be the rationale. The number of states, the fact that the states in the Northwest are heavily populated, and many of them are also cosmopolitan. Sokoto, Kano, Katsina are very well-known trade routes during the trans-Saharan trade route. So it doesn't, and there's every high level of political consciousness in the Northwest.
You don't take that away from them.
You can't take that away from them.
So now we will get to this is the total registration now. So this is probably where we anchor. So we come back to eventual total registration. We have just about a few minutes to anchor. So this Lagos, you know, showing is you give me Lagos, I give you Kano. You see what happens in past election. We go to the permutations later on in the coming days. But Doc, give us a sense of how this is standing. These are the states that will give you, if you want to win an election in Nigeria, you should be counting on these figures because they will matter.
Yeah, absolutely. They will matter. And I think in the last 3 or so cycles of our elections, we clearly see the influence of Lagos, of Kano, of Rivers, and in Kaduna in particular. And people tell you that the directions that this or whoever is going to win election, at least at the presidential level, must be able to take at least 2 out of these 3 or 4 core that we have defined above. So, and no surprise actually that all the major political parties are struggling to actually get hold of these major voting population-centered state. The challenge you have, particularly for Lagos, is the turnout, and that's a major thing. Because unfortunately, Lagos has all the number, but the turnout is very poor. So if you compare Lagos to, and that is why Kano appears to be, despite that it's next to Lagos, but it is the most important state when it comes to presidential elections because of the turnout that you get. Because Doug, again,
because we are totally out of time. So you look at the figures between Muhammadu Buhari and Atiku Abubakar in 2019. It's less than 4 million. Is it?
Yes.
Mr. Ojo, can you remember?
15 million to 11 million.
Just about less than 4 million votes. And so when we look at it and say, Kano, Kaduna, Katsina, if you have very good friends there and you have very good influence and you have some money, you might hold on to those states and leave the battle to the other state. But that's how we anchor tonight on the program. Thank you so much. Mr. Aluko, do you have anything the last word?
Just to say that Nigerians who have not collected their PVCs should please do so.
Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate your coming tonight. Victor Aluko is the Director of Voter Education with INEC. Judy Ojo, our very good friend here, political analyst and China's television election consultant. Dr. Hussein Abdul, Chairman of the Board of YAG Africa. Thank you so much, gentlemen. What a way to end our Friday with these figures. Keep these figures in mind because they will be important in the coming days because this election is very critical. In fact, someone said this is the most critical election in the over 60 years of Nigeria's history.
That's true.
We'll find out if that is true. And if that is true, it depends and it's in the hand of those of you who are watching me tonight. You Nigerians, you matter. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'm Sean Okimale. I'll see you on Sunday at 8 p.m., God willing. God bless Nigeria.